Good evening. I am hereby calling to order the November 12th, 2018 meeting of the Mayfield Heights City Council. May I have a roll call, please, Lisa?
Mr. Balestria, Mr. DeJohn,
Here.
Mrs. Finney,
Here.
Mr. Mano,
Here.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Here.
Mrs. Snyder,
Here.
Mrs. Tressi.
Here.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. We'll start out with the approval of the minutes from the council meeting on October 22nd, 2018. I trust everyone had time to read them over. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the council meeting on October 22nd, 2018? Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Are there any suggested changes, amendments, or deletions to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the minutes are approved as written. Next on our agenda are correspondence and announcements. Does any member of council have any correspondence or announcements? Mrs. Tressi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just wanted to say that I had the opportunity to go over and see the renovation of the middle school. I don't know if anyone else has had the opportunity to see it. Mrs. Snyder shaking her head. The gym has been redone, and the cafeteria, that whole lower level is just really beautiful. It's so different compared to what it was when we were doing after prom at the school. But if you have the opportunity to go and see it, you should. They've really done a wonderful job, and now they have one more phase to do, and I'm sure it'll come out just as beautiful as this phase. So I wanted to just enlighten everyone on how lucky those children are in the middle school today.
Thank you, Mrs. Tressi. We'll have to go check it out, of course. We'll probably have to, have security clearance first, right? Anybody else? Any other correspondence or announcements? Seeing none, we'll start out with reports of officers, starting with the mayor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening. On this Veterans Day, we would like to thank all members of our armed forces, past and present, who have served our country. We're grateful for your service, and we are grateful for your sacrifice. On October 30th, nearly 40 veterans and their guests attended the second annual Veterans Dinner at the Community Center. After a great dinner, Connie Luda, a pilot, shared historical information about the Women's International Air and Space Museum located at Burke Lakefront Airport. The presentation was very informative and highlighted the many accomplishments of female pilots. Also, John Murphy from the American Legion talked about many of the services that are provided to veterans and their families. The evening was just a small tribute to thank those who served our country. On Saturday evening, the Community Partnership on Aging celebrated their 40th anniversary at the Hilton Garden Inn with a fundraiser. Very nice event, very well attended, and we congratulate them on their 40th anniversary. And along those same lines, the CPA has every third Friday of every month, a podiatrist is available to our senior residents. Dr. Spivak visits the community center between 9 and 11:30 to see patients. You can call 216-650-4029 to schedule an appointment, and CPA asks that you bring your Medicare card to your appointment. The city is working on a new project, the Transportation for Livable Communities Initiative, with funds secured from a NOACA grant. This project will allow us to study ways to improve the transportation needs of pedestrians and cyclists throughout our city, with links to neighboring cities. The Mayfield Heights Connectivity Study will help identify improvements that will support the community's safe connectivity to schools, employment, shopping, and recreation. The first step is to assemble a committee of stakeholders, which will include representatives from the city schools, mayors from neighboring communities, businesses, and residents. The Stakeholders Committee meeting is scheduled for November 14th at City Hall. The stakeholders will work on future plans in coordination with AECom, who is facilitating the meeting. A public meeting to present plans will be held on Wednesday, December 5th at 7 p.m. in the community center. To inform residents about this meeting, we will post it on our website and all of our communication channels. AECom's study will prioritize feasibility and funding for the project and determine what is best for the city and the stakeholders. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any questions for the mayor? Seeing none, we'll move on to Director of Law, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Are there any questions for Mr. Murphy? Next, we'll move on to Director of Finance, Mr. Tribby.
No report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Tribby. Any questions for Mr. Tribby? Next on our agenda are reports of committees, commissions, and boards. We'll start out with the Building Committee, Mrs. Snyder.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Building Committee met on November 7th to go over 2 agenda items: temporary signs and annual licensing fees for amusement devices. Everyone should have received a copy of the draft minutes. A revised set of minutes will be distributed at a later date. A recommendation was made to have future meetings to answer questions that came up during our meeting. And also, I will be calling a meeting very soon to go over the pods and possible new legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Snyder. Are there any questions for Mrs. Snyder? Mr. Mano.
Mrs. Snyder, first of all, I want to tell you that the committee did a heck of a job. The comprehensive information that you put together was very, very good, very worthwhile. However, I have a couple of comments. Number one is I would hope that you can do the next meeting at a time when more council people can attend.
Yes.
I'd love to attend the meeting. And I have a couple of comments on just a couple of things here, because I know Mr. Murphy's going to be doing some drafting on this, but this thing about helping businesses to advertise, I think that's kind of a slippery slope, because if you do that for one, you're going to need to do it for others, and I don't think the city should really be involved in helping businesses to promote themselves. That's just my thoughts. The other thing was on the gaming devices. You know, most of that fee that's they're being charged is already built into their fee structure is built into what they charge their customers to use those machines, and I just feel that the city shouldn't give up any kind of fee collection that they're getting. The dollars coming in should remain. You may not have to raise the fees, but I wouldn't give any of it back. That's just the comments I have, and I would look forward to the next meeting.
Sure, we'll make
Thank
sure
you.
it's after 5.
Thank you, Mr. Mano. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to Finance and Audit Committee, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Finance and Audit did not meet, so I have no report, but we were all, as council, invited to the Senior Audit Exit Conference, and Matthew Goldman, who is the Senior Audit Manager, held it on Wednesday at 3 o'clock. He explained that he did the field work and the overview to date, and the city received an unmodified opinion. That is the best a city could receive, and that's his quote. No reportable deficiencies. But most important, he explained that he has been in the audit service for 11 years, and he's worked 10 years with Mayfield Heights, and he extended his great pleasure to work with Mr. Tribby, and a thank you. And I wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Any questions for Mrs. Sabetta? Kudos, Mr. Tribby. Next, we'll move on to Legislative Committee, Mrs. Tracy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Legislative Committee did meet on October 22nd to discuss Ordinance 2018-29 pertaining to council voting rules. This ordinance pertains to a council member extending a vote to abstain for conflict. Mr. Murphy drew up an ordinance with some verbiage stating that an abstention would be a no vote. And I believe we're going to have another meeting to go over the draft that Mr. Murphy has provided. I will let you know as soon as that next meeting is scheduled.
Thank you, Mrs. Teresi. Are there any questions for Mrs. Teresi? Next, we'll move on to Public Works and Service Committee. Mr. Balestri is not here. Do you know who's on the committee, Lisa? Mr. DeJohn? Any report, Mr. DeJohn?
No report other than I know residents are concerned about all the leaves out there, so maybe we can have Mr. Finaro come up and maybe tell us how he's gonna handle that situation.
Excuse me, Mr. DeJohn, I don't think you have the right to call people up at this point. We're not gonna ask Mr. Finaro to come up. I see they're out there working hard. I see them every day picking up leaves, so I appreciate it. Next, we'll move on to Parks and Recreation, Mr. Mano.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There's still time to attend our next Silver Social Dinner Dance this coming Saturday, November 17th from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Entertainment by Golden Notes. Menu will be lasagna, salad, bread, dessert, and coffee. $10 per person with advanced registration. Thank you to Highland Point Health and Rehab and HCR Manor Care, Mayfield, for sponsoring this year's dances. Tickets are now on sale for the Breakfast with Santa, scheduled for Saturday, December 8th. The cost is $7 per person and includes breakfast, train ride, picture with Santa, and a story with Mrs. Claus. Advanced reservations are required. No sales at the door. Call the Recreation Department to make your reservation. Wildcat Sport and Fitness. Now that the weather is changing, we have a wide range of programs for your family to join. Membership is not required to participate in our programs. Call 440-995-6840 or visit the city's website to learn more about programs like pickleball, indoor bocce, yoga, tai chi, kids yoga, kids kung fu, dance to evolve, cycling, water exercise programs, and more. For any information on any recreation program, please call the office at 442-2627 or check the city's website and select Park and Recreation. That's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Mano. And just for the record, we really enjoyed the Halloween program. It was a lot of fun. Any questions for Mr. Mano? Seeing none, we'll move on to Safety and Transportation. Mr. DeJohn.
I have no report, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeJohn. Is there any questions for Mr. DeJohn? Seeing none, we'll move on to Board of Zoning. Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Board of Zoning will meet tomorrow here in Council Chambers at 7 p.m. There is a large agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Are there any questions for Mrs. Sabetta? Next, we'll move on to Planning Commission. Mr. Balestrier, Mayor, any report?
Thank you, Madam President. Our last meeting was canceled due to a lack of agenda. I believe we will have a meeting a week from this evening, though.
Thank you, Mayor. Any questions for the mayor? Next, we move on to the public portion of the meeting. Pursuant to city code, each person will be allowed 5 minutes to speak, with a maximum of 30 minutes allotted for the entire public portion. Although it is not a time for public debate, this is your opportunity to address council with your concerns. Please know that no personal attacks or comments will be allowed. Also, if you are here in connection with an agenda item, this is your opportunity to address council. If you would like to be heard this evening, please raise your hand and be recognized. Then approach the podium and state your name and address for the record. It is now 7:15. I will now open the public portion. Would anyone like to be heard this evening? Chief?
Brad Bittner, Chief of Police, Mayfield Heights. I just wanted to come up and share some good news. Last summer, we had, about a year ago, I think all of you know, we started a volunteer victim advocate program with Allison Corpus as our volunteer advocate from our community. She was big in trying to get something like this going, and I worked with her and we got it going. Now, last summer we applied for State Attorney General, through the State Attorney General's office, for a grant to try to get the program full-time. And just in mid-October, we just found out we got the grant. It's worth about $90,000. We're gonna staff, we've begun setting up the office, and we're gonna use Allison and bring her on now as a part-time employee, as well as our chaplain, David Kern, who's also a counselor, and he'll help fill in the role to make the 40 hours. And they've already started, we've set up the office, they've already started going through our reports, we've set them up on our computers and learn how to do everything. And they're using their own creativity as well as some other ideas we had. But now we're actually actively going out and seeking victims of crimes or witnesses of crimes who might have been disturbed by a crime in our city, and offering them help and providing them help, connecting them to services that are available to them. They've already this week reached out to several people that in the past would not have been reached out to. A year ago in November, they passed the Marcy's Law Amendment to the State of Ohio Constitution, which does put a little more reporting requirements on courts and police departments as far as reaching out to victims. So this will help us be able to meet that amendment, and we're going to work close with Judge Coletta at the court and try to help them out as well, getting notifications to victims of when appearances are in trials and pre-trials. So it's really an outstanding thing. The gentleman from the Attorney General's office in Cleveland said that we're the first city or police department in Cuyahoga County to have this program full-time. So we're pretty proud of it, and I thought I'd come up and share that with you guys.
Thank you, Chief. Congratulations. That's great. Keep up the good work. You're doing a great job. Thank you for your service. Anybody else like to speak? Nobody else? Seeing no one else, we'll close the public portion at 7:18. Next on our agenda is Resolution 2018-69. I'm going to ask Mrs. Snyder to chair this resolution since I have a personal relationship with the property owner.
Thank you. Resolution 2018-69, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair. Resolution number 2018-69. Excuse me. A resolution reversing the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in determining a self-storage facility use proposed by John Mulkin on behalf of Fairchild Management Company for 1413 Golden Gate Boulevard, Mayfield Heights, Ohio, also known as permanent parcel numbers 862-06-050, 862-06-071, 862-06-072, and 862-06-073, is a use consistent with the uses authorized in a U4 local retail wholesale district and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Do I have a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, second by? I'll second the motion. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Abstain.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Abstain.
Seeing that we do not have 6 votes to suspend the rules, Resolution 2018-69 will be placed on first reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Snyder. We will move on to Resolution 2018-70. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2018-70, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an amendment to the PCS site lease agreement with STC2 LLC by and through Global Signal Acquisitions 3 LLC regarding an antenna and appurtenances located upon the real property known as Cuyahoga County permanent parcel numbers 863-05-019 and 863-05-058 City Hall Complex and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. We're going to ask for this to be placed on first reading because we're still waiting for the structural analysis of this tower. So we need a motion to place this on first reading, please.
Moved.
Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Could I have a roll call, please, Lisa?
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes. Resolution 2018-70 has been placed on first reading. Next on our agenda is ordinances. We'll start with ordinance 2018-34. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ordinance number 2018-34, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Mayfield Heights to enter into a collective bargaining contract with the laborers' local union number 860, Service Department Bargaining Unit, and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Tressi,
Abstain.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Abstain.
Mr. DeJohn,
Abstain.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes. Ordinance 2018-34 has been placed on first reading. Next on our agenda is ordinance 2018-35. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ordinance number 2018-35, an ordinance authorizing the continuation of a Section 125 premium-only plan in accordance with Internal Revenue Service regulations. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend, please.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Any discussion? Mayor and Bob?
We've had this Section 125 program in place for many years. This is just the annual renewal of it. There's no cost to the city, and it does provide for some savings for our employees for the amount of the healthcare premiums that are deducted.
Thank you, Mr. Trivy. Any other questions? Seeing none, could we have a roll call, please, Lisa?
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes. Ordinance 2018-35 has been adopted. We have no motions tonight, so is there any further business or comments from the council? Mrs. Snyder?
Just wanted to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Mrs. Snyder. Are we all coming to your house for dinner?
Sure, come on over.
Do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are now adjourned. Thank you for joining us.